Hello, Garrett French here with Citation Labs. Today I'm excited to be walking you through how we use autocomplete for blog prospecting. All right, so I'm gonna check this out here and figure out how to share my screen with you guys, so you can follow along and you can check out my cards here. Let's see. Dang it. Thank you for your patience. Oh, there we go. Present. That's what I want to do. All right, you guys. This is blog prospecting again with autocomplete. I think this isn't crazy, right? To be thinking this isn't crazy new to be thinking about autocomplete in this way, or using it this way, but I think we've got some novel approaches that are worth talking through and kind of demonstrating. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, why? Why not just search for, if you need parenting blogs, why not just search for parenting blogs? What difference does it make? Well, the reason is there's several, but one is, I think if you've been working in a space for a while, you've got lots of assumptions about that space and what people care about in that space. And when you can prospect, or when you can discover these kinds of broader information needs from your audience, you're suddenly looking past what is your, the box you've been living in, right? You just don't know what your kind of box is, or what you think your audience wants versus what they're actually looking for. There's always more. There's always these unexpected angles, right? And that's what autocomplete, for us anyhow, has really kind of helped us discover, right? So it's great in areas where you suspect you may have some preconceived biases about what is and isn't an audience-related topic. The other is when you enter into a new space. This is where we found it especially useful. We had to go into archery for a client, the archery space. Nobody at my company has ever, not they haven't shot a bow and arrow, but they're not, really enthusiasts or into the hobby or into that passion. And we didn't really know where to even start pulling threads around topic areas and, again, what we call info needs. What kinds of stuff are people looking for? And then, of course, it's not just about what is of interest to this audience or what's important to this audience. It's also discovering the publishers who are providing information to those audiences. This is why we use this process. You don't have to. You could just, keep doing what you've been doing. But I assume you're here if you're, interested in kind of broadening your how you or broadening the range of prospects you discover, and then having an overall better understanding of topic areas that your audience cares about. Who should use it? So again, folks, if you think you know your space and you're maybe bored, or your team is complaining, or you've run out of publishers, that kind of thing. Certainly link builders who have what we would call placeable content, like a guest post or something like that. It's not as useful, I wouldn't imagine, for kind of what I call the 1%ers, or people who are creating content tailor-made for the bigger publishers in their vertical. Oops, what is this? Sorry, guys. This is something I'm going to show you all later. Let me get back here. I just finally opened up. It's a big file. I got excited. Let's see. So yeah, folks, going into new topic spaces. I wouldn't say it's great for if you're just doing a little link building on the side. It's probably not a fantastic approach for you. You just don't need to go this deep. It's if you've been working in a space for years, for example, then this could be productive. Or if you've got a big team and you've been working in a space for a few months, then this could be useful. But if you're, really not working at any serious scale, it's not going to be super productive, and frankly might be counterproductive, because whatever gets in the way of you sending emails is preventing you from getting links. So don't overdo this if you don't need to. I do want to talk about limitations, what I don't see this being useful for. So what we call emerging keyword spaces. John Henry mentioned that he noticed that the autocomplete in some B2B spaces came from Google's analysis of documents as opposed to actual, this was his assumption, actual keyword demand. So what does that mean? Well, it means that there probably aren't that many publishers out there, and it might not be a super productive way forward. Now, doesn't mean you don't want to know what Google's extracted from these documents, but it probably means that there's not going to be a ton of prospects that are going to be related. I'd say a major limitation is that it's still kind of fuzzy to me, and you'll see that too on in this call, or in this conversation rather, is there's not a real proper methodology around extracting the elements that we're seeing in these lists, in the autocomplete suggestions, and I'm not really sure how to create that framework. And this is something I got to talk with Tom and Chris from over at I'm From the Future, the SEO guys. Pretty sure they're in Philly. They'll tell me if they're not. They helped me talk through this webinar, and they were interested in the subject. And one of the things that Chris pointed out was you could also, after you've gone through the suggestions, you could also go to a publisher's site and look at their categories and kind of extract from there as well to get a better, more rounded sense of information or product needs or what have you. And that's true. This isn't a one-stop solution for that, for understanding the whole range of what you might need to talk about in a vertical to be relevant to your audience, or what are the longer tail kind of informational queries that happen, what are the concerns and needs of the space. It's not going to be everything. It can be noisy too. And then, there's a lot of, I call it granular thinking. You'll see what I'm talking about, analysis as you go through. You can find only competitors potentially. I guess it would depend on the space also. Then probably you're going to be doing a lot of contact finding. You're going to need to do a lot of contact finding and have an outreach team to support those contacts that you found. If you don't have that kind of infrastructure in place, it might not be super productive for you. And then if you're like me, you're just going to dive in way, way, way too deep, and you won't get your other jobs done. But that's a good problem to have. Let's see. So first, I'm going to be talking through kind of new topic discovery, or the just kind of the entry. How do we enter into each one of these? So we're going to be looking at archery, network security, local SEO, and parenting. And so I wanted to. So archery and network security to me are completely unknown. Like I don't know these spaces. So I ran through archery already, but I still don't really know it or understand it. I can search for blogs about it. I don't really understand it. I can make suggestions on topics to write about, but I wouldn't be able to write them without a bunch of research. And network security, I really haven't dug through yet. I'm excited to kind of pick it apart and understand the space a little better, some of its facets and parameters. Local SEO, I don't really know it, actually, to be honest. I say it's known, but I'm familiar with it. It's a familiar space. And we've got a tool we're launching for ZipSprout here in the next couple weeks or so. And I wanted to do some outreach there. And so I did some prospecting. I'll show you what that, kind of the process for that we use for finding opportunities. And then parenting. so I call this a known space. I got 3 kids, and I do a lot of parenting. Probably do a little more of that than I do link building, but I still found it really useful to break out of my preconceived concepts of what parenting is and what parenting means to different, different people, different practitioner groups or groups of individuals, not just single individual parents, but large groups of people. So just briefly, I'm going to soon turn off the slideshow and start opening up some spreadsheets, and it's going to get really exciting then, guys, visually speaking. But just this is how, I went from these keywords, right, into an autocomplete scraper that my buddy Jeff built for me. He's here in town. He owns a bike shop. He's what I would call a rad dude, and a great developer. And he built this for us, but you use what you like, and you put in your keyword and get your suggestions back. And then what I'm going to really kind of talk through and share is that process of analysis and disambiguation of the terms, because what I like to do is do a second pass. You start with something like archery, and then you have to look at each keyword one by one, and then you're going to be adding stuff to it. So this is the process here. You've got a single term autocomplete result. You find terms that are ambiguous or terms that are not going to be productive or useful. And then I then add kind of conjunctions to the end of the terms that I want to keep. And then I put that whole mess back into our autocomplete scraper. And so that's the part that I don't think many of the tools that are available do. I'm probably wrong, but none that I've seen do it. So you could put 20, 30 related kind of phrases into the tool and get a big list back. And that's the piece that's exciting to me. But to get there productively, you've got to do this disambiguation, find those keywords that are productive. And now we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to, let's see, try to stop sharing this thing. And now I'm going to bust open, we'll look at, I think my order was archery first. So just to keep it orderly. So we put the word archery into our tool. And so what starts to come back the most frequently, it's usually pretty interesting to see. Archery games. My concern there is that it's going to be archery games online. So we'll end up with a bunch of sites that are like reviews of games or, so I don't think this is going to be productive from a blog prospecting perspective. I could see, from a topic perspective, it's probable that teachers would be looking for games you can play with archery, maybe. I don't know, backyard archery or at school archery games. So with real bow and arrow. So I would say that's possible, but I would honestly set that one aside. I don't think I wouldn't use it for prospecting purposes, though I would investigate it for topical purposes. So this is like, what next, right? So, so you could start building your list out, topics, and then, prospecting. And then some of them can and should be in both, but so this is for archery. Now, let's see. I don't want to scare you guys. Or bore you too much. There's 262 in here. I would definitely go through all of them, but I won't for this call. For this webinar, because it takes a long time, and we want to cover a little more ground. But just real quickly, archery range. So as soon as we get into archery range, I know we're talking about a real physical archery range where I can bring a bow and arrow and shoot it. So this starts to become interesting, and I think this is productive to kind of layer in with for prospecting. So we still have more work we got to do to this one, right? But we'll come back around to that extra work that needs to happen or the next step with that. But I definitely think that's productive for prospecting. Now, from a topic perspective, absolutely. Archery range, right? DIY, archery range safety. There's going to be a ton of topics that relate to archery range. And so, again, this is one of those things where if you're coming cold into archery, you might not even know the word range. That's what, so you might be doing a little more searching and that sort of thing. I happen to know it, but there's spaces, when we dig in on network security, I don't know anything about it. And so that's where you kind of start learning what are the aspects of this topic space around which people are asking questions. So, or what are they curious about, or what are they trying to find? So obviously, the archery range near me is pretty interesting. This tells us that people are looking for these. Archery target, lovely. So I would definitely throw this in the prospecting pool. Archery shop near me, great. Archery talk, I don't know. Probably its own website, I'm guessing. And I'm not going to dig in on. I wouldn't. That might be a publisher. So if you're thinking of how do we kind of systematically categorize these, I would put that. I mean, I just frankly ignored it, but so I'll just do that again. Archery tag. This sounds like a game. Sounds fun, as long as I assume we're not using real arrows. Archery bow, but so archery tag. I think that needs more research, but I don't think it's going to be good for prospecting. It might. So we just need to learn what that is. It could be a really popular online game, for example. I mean, who knows? So some of this you are going to have to, hop over into Google and just see what it's about. So archery bow, I mean, definitely that's for prospecting. And it's going to be a topic as well. So maybe we just assume that if it's a topic, it's also for prospecting. I don't know. So I'm doing on the fly. I don't normally when I attack, I'm just looking for prospecting phrases. And I don't do I just do a big mass prospecting phrase search. And then from those, I'll try and extract topics. So I don't usually do quite approach it this way. So videos, video games. Videos are interesting because it's going to give us a sense of the range of what people are doing or trying to archery video about, and that's going to tell you some of the stuff that people are trying to learn. Video games, no. Vanes, archery vanes. I think we need to learn what that is because I have no idea. So maybe that would be, we could have a what is it kind of thing. Archery vanes. I'll throw archery tag up there. And yeah, I'm gonna kill the topics category. Sorry guys, and just that's I just think if it's the topic, we should just put it into for prospecting. So a VR game, archery verb, archery vocabulary gets interesting. I don't think that's going to be useful for us for prospecting, but it would be useful for us to better understand the space. So, you don't have to go through a list of, autocomplete suggestions to think of, gosh, I should just look for glossaries and vocabulary. But you can, and I just did. Let's see. So archery vector, you need to learn about that. What is it before we would put it in for prospecting? Archery vest. So this is an item. Let's throw it in. Let's prospect for it. So I like products or individual items that are used in a vertical. People write about that stuff. There's a lot of DIY related queries in the archery space. Ooh, archery lessons, that gets really neat. Now, it will probably be online lessons that we'd be discovering, but Archery laws, cool. Neat. And so this would, if you were writing or you're looking for topics like the laws about archery in your area, is it legal to set up an archery range in your backyard? That's probably a pretty common kind of thing that people are wondering. And again, what we're kind of uncovering or discovering are these sort of facets that intersect or relate to this big bucket of archery, this big concept. Archery gloves and gear, nice. Archery game Pigeon. So that's, I wonder if it's an online game, but we can check that out. Archery gifts, okay, games and blog, GIF. Archery King, kit, Archery Kids. I'm not sure about that one. Archery Nock. I think you knock arrows. So let's find that out. Archery Zen, releases, rules. I think a rangefinder is probably an item. Oops, let me throw it down in prospecting. So again, why would we want to search? Okay, so say my client sells bows and arrows or something. Why do you want to look for rangefinders? Well, if someone has written about an archery rangefinder, they are pretty deep into the subject of archery. And so what we're finding are some of the tells of, what this vertical cares about. What are the phrases and terms that are footprints that are specific to archery with a bow and arrow, right? So archery wrist guard, another, I think, pretty strong one. So if you're writing about an archery wrist guard, you're deep in. This is you're talking about an individual unit of doing this activity, right? I don't know what a jode is. I hope that's not an offensive term. I'm going to throw that up here. Quiver. Archery quest questions. Quiver backpack. I mean, that just sounds pretty badass. Let's throw that on there. Archery store. Excuse me. Sights. So for aiming, I presume. What did I do? Archery Olympics. I don't think I want to go there because then we get into way more granular than I think. It's like the sports side. Oh, this is interesting. So Archery Tag Seattle. That tells me that this really is a thing. I'm wondering if it isn't like paintball. I bet a thumb ring is something that's like one of those items for practitioners that's important. Archery for kids, yes. Archery finger tab. And so, I mean, what I'm doing, I could keep going. I really could. This is really interesting. But the next thing that I would do, frankly, is take all of these and just drop them as a whole set into our suggest tool. So this is what Jeff made. Oops. Just dump all your terms in here. Submit. Excuse me, folks. And it'll be done in just a second. So let me go back to the slides for a second and just kind of talk through, what I've been doing. So I've been going through our list of archery terms. Did I disambiguate? Kind of. It was more like I was looking for stuff that was a sure tell for just the aspect of archery I was interested in, which was actual archery with a bow and arrow for beginners or for whoever who's trying to get started in it, or an existing practitioner. So I'm looking for the phrases that are topical footprints, that if someone talks about a rangefinder, an archery rangefinder, well, they're probably, unless it's like finding a way to find an archery, no, even if it is, But if it's an item that is attached to your bow and you're talking about it on a blog or on your website, then you are talking about archery. And so therefore, we should be checking your site out and seeing if we should try and work with you or publish content with you or what have you. So now, one thing I didn't do was add appropriate conjunctions. So this, I don't know, I had made that step for myself, but I think running through the list was just as effective. But what I will often do is, go back to our list, and we would, so archery target, and then I'll pop over to Google. Let's see, I need to escape. There we go. My machine's a little slow today. So I do like to bounce back and forth from individual keywords into what I'm actually seeing in Google. So this gets really compelling, right? Archery target scoring, target block, target foam, backstop, bag. I don't know what panic is. It's probably from a game or something. Pins. And so all this stuff is new to me, more or less. Not Walmart, but some of the stuff that I do is to kind of see how deep do we need to go into archery target. So archery target 4, and I'm trying to learn how do I need to add a 4 to this? Because what's going to happen is if I have archery target, then the tool just does archery target A, B, C, D, E. But if I have 4, then it's going to go for A, B, C, D. And I'm still seeing a bunch of stuff popping. Now it's not all, I don't see the word 4 actually beneath that. So, and this is where ambiguity starts to creep back in too. Even though archery target is most likely related to something in the physical world, here's Dragon Quest XI sticking his nose in there. We don't need that, but there it is anyways. I don't know what these things are, but anyhow, so maybe we don't need any conjunctions on this particular for this particular query. We could just put it in flat and get a ton of good stuff back. D, E, F, G. So I mean, look at this. Again, I don't know what all these are, but they're wonderful. Each one, archery target, how to make, and then you do in URL blog. And who do we start to find? Well, these are the guys who are writing about how to make archery targets. Let's see, we can also put it to the last year. We just want to find stuff where people have written about it more recently. We can go past month. And then you start to dig down into these are folks who have just published in the last month or so. And they're very, they're recent publishers. It doesn't mean that they're going to publish your content, but they have published recently, which is often a difficult thing to ascertain. Okay, so to bring us back a little bit, we have looked at archery now. I'm gonna pop open, and this was a new subject. I'm gonna pop open network security now. Network security. This one is I don't know it. I mean, I know it less than archery, and it confuses me, or doesn't confuse me, but it just baffles me. Now I cheated a little bit here. I did network security, and I did network security 4, just the word 4. So you'll see, quite a bit. Well, here it starts to creep in for dummies, for beginners, for home. But what we start to unpack here is what zones or what I don't what realms, if we could use that term, does network security apply to? Who cares about it and why? So, some of this network security key, I don't even, that's probably like, I don't know what that is. It's probably people trying to get into other people's networks and whatnot, or their own network. So with all these, I wouldn't use them. I would just, delete them because they're just not going to be useful. Network security key, I don't think we need that. Interview questions for network security engineer. Now, I mean, this tells us a lot. If you were dead, dead to network security, you wouldn't have known there were things like network security engineers, but lo and behold, there are. So now we know there's a whole profession related to it. We don't need that one. That's interesting. Job description. Now, I don't know what we're promoting or what we're trying to learn more about. So if we're in kind of the job space for network security, then I think those two would be really compelling. But if we're in the hardware or services or software side of it, then we may not be as interested in those unless we're trying to get in front of, the market itself of publishers who are writing for network security engineers, in which case maybe we really want those. So anyways, just keep picking through this. Network security for home gets interesting. And so this is great. This gives us some range of the job titles. Security key mismatch. That sounds like an issue that somebody's having. Interview questions for network security. Best practices. So now I'm starting to bucket these. I'm looking at, basically get a job in this space. And then I'm also seeing like more hard, like how-to type stuff here. Raspberry Pi. So now we get into individual types of, I don't know what that is, operating systems. Key for Wi-Fi, no. Silk, no. Security tools, yes. So this is, seeing something like this, I think this is going to be a great keyword to use, and probably unpack some stuff for us. This is, again, I'm seeing a lot of that get started in a career in network security. And depending on why or what you sell or what your marketing objectives are, those may or may not be super useful to you. And again, we're looking at slicing into this from the complete newcomer's perspective, which a lot of times we are as marketers going into a new space. We don't know. So this becomes interesting. It's probable then that we're going to have, information for people who are existing network security folks or trying to learn a little bit about it, probably for at-home use. And then there's also a whole profession for it. And I know everybody knew that already, but it's also evident in the suggestions that we're seeing here. And this gets real interesting, because I would pull this one out. I would do network security tools for and scrape that and see what is coming back. So this is interesting. What to learn for network security. Network security. So this is good too for businesses, for banks. Best firewall for network security. Best programming language for network security. Security group I don't think that's it. Resume, we'll keep it, but I'm leaning more towards not slicing into the job market space and more into the broader space. For Mac, I mean, this is great stuff for Internet of Things devices. Machine learning algorithms. So I would not be best suited for digging into these individual topics, but this is what people are looking for. And we could probably, let me delete these just so I remember to delete them. And then, what was that one? I want to see that machine learning one. There we go. I just want to throw this in Google and see what's coming back on the blog side of things. Yes, legit. So let's see, past month, we're looking at machine learning algorithms for network security. And I don't know what any of this is. And I would not send an email to any of these guys because I'm going to sound like a dum-dum. But these are folks from the last month. I wouldn't say, well, yeah, machine learning algorithms, detect cyber threats. I guess that's pretty much what this is talking about. So these are folks who have just recently written about this topic. If you could speak to it, then I mean, I don't think they're going to publish. I don't think darktrace.com is going to publish a guest post from you. But these are the folks who care about this kind of a topic. And if you've got the right pitch or the right offer, you might be able to get some visibility on their sites, or it could make sense to engage with them in some way. And again, this is just limited to the past month and actual blogs. So I also recommend we just search for blog, because we're going to see, oh, nope, still Darktrace. And so, yeah, somebody like Cisco is going to show up now because they have the word blog on their site somewhere or on that page somewhere, even though that this particular page isn't on their blog. So when you run a query like this, you're finding more of the topical authorities that may or may not have written about this subject on a blog, but who do have blogs. So that's why I run this kind of a query as well. So again, this is past month, and what we've been doing is running through the network security terms that we got back, and kind of starting to unpack them and get a sense of what kind of demand are we seeing. Now, why would I do this instead of looking at keyword demands? Just go right into that paid search tool, whatever it is, where you can see what keyword demand looks like. For me, I don't really know that approach, or don't really ever use those types of tools. So I've just haven't done it. It could be productive as well, and that might be even a better way forward. So, but anyways, so this one is, let's see just what comes back here. So I'm liking what I'm seeing though. So it's network security for small businesses. We saw it for banks, for businesses. So I would probably start to run several different, if I really wanted to find all the publishers in this space, I would start to batch some of these, and I batch them by, like, is it in the job space, in the career track space, or is it more of a review or just advice for different types of businesses. And then, you get down into, I guess, Netgear is probably, I don't know what it is, I'm embarrassed, but that's probably either an operating system or a platform or something. And so, oh no, that's the key, never mind. I think that's a router or something, never mind. So ignore that one. Network security for hardware, best network security for home. And so you're starting to see some of the various applications for people who are interested in network security, and you start to unpack where, based on what our capabilities are to even write about. So for us, we're not a hard tech kind of an agency. We would go the network security for home or network security for small business, and kind of try to see what's the range of topics for that. So that's one potential way forward here. You could cherry pick some that you think you could execute on, and then throw those back in and see what comes out. So let's do that. I mean, let's pretend like this was going to be our project, and I want to make it really easy for us. So I'm actually just going to search for home. We'll find all instances here. Network security for home. Let's pop that bad boy out. So I didn't even run through. I'm, do as I say, not as I do here, guys. Best network security for home. Well, network security appliance for home. And we're going to run this security onion for home network. I don't even know what that means. For the home, that's too close to for home. Home lab. Okay, that's not a ton. let's pop these in and see what comes back out. It's a small set. I wonder if we do home network security as well. Let's probably search more. Let's see what Google's suggesting though. Security. Yeah, look at that. Oh, beautiful. Okay, we'll run it like that as well. Okay, these are two spaces that we didn't know. Looks like archery's back, so we can bust that one open and get a sense of kind of the full. It's not even the whole enchilada. We didn't go through that whole list, but what a lot of these topics are likely to be about, or what's going to be of interest to the publishers. Let's see. So a lot of local stuff, guys. This is interesting. I'm wondering, I think if we were looking for archery related publishers, probably some archery ranges have websites and even have blogs. So archery range, Jackson, Tennessee. Let's see what comes back. We'll throw in your blog on there. Nope, doesn't look like it. If there's any there. So, oh, it's for past month though. Let's do past year. So this is bowhunting.com. Not really what we're looking for. So yeah, I don't think that's particularly productive. So these might be a whole set, like any of the location specifics, we might not want to mess with. Well, let's see. So now we got 2,000 here. And this is, you can get real messy real fast in terms of making a lot of work for yourself. How do you wear a finger tab in archery? So this is the thing where you run this query and you throw blog, you throw in URL blog, and you're going to find publishers who are writing very specifically to this very particular audience. So, I mean, and I'm not even going to get into stuff like this, string alignment for consistent archery shots. That's probably frequently written about. String alignment, I didn't even know that was a thing that was important in archery. So this is also, as you're digging in, this is where the prospecting role and the ideation role really overlap. As you're prospecting, you're kind of uncovering topic directions, and this is why I do all the prospecting for our agency. It's because I'm also finding opportunities as I search. So a ton of great looking publishers in the space. Now you don't want to go to them with content that's not worthy, but these are the publishers out there who are, I would say, deep into archery, right? This is one of those queries that I think is a deep in archery type of query. Can you use a rangefinder in 3D archery? So I think 3D archery is a game. So I would call that an ambiguator, and really it's a garbager. Let's just see if 3D archery, what it is. Let's search 3D archery. Okay, it's real. Well, okay, guys. What is? Three-dimensional targets. Okay, so it is not a game. Welcome to learning. So this is 3D targets are apparently big, and I guess I get it. They'd be more fun to shoot at probably than a paper target. Well, that could be a whole topic that you could do, build a campaign around if you're looking for placements. It could be something like the 10 wackiest 3D targets. Don't do this. It's probably been done, but 10 wackiest 3D targets on Instagram or something like that. Excuse me. Some of your publishers might be open to that sort of thing. But again, this is when I talked about some of the limitations. What I mean is that, like, we still don't really have a strong process for finding everything, right? Or kind of methodology for, okay, so string alignment. You discover some common problem in your topic space, string alignment in archery, for example, which I still don't know what it is, but you discover it and you know it's important. Well, what do you do with it? Right now, I just pass it by and say, "Oh, that's pretty cool." But really, if you're mapping your space and you're new to the space and you're mapping kind of what the topics are and trying to understand, the whole spectrum of information on archery, well, string alignment might be pretty important, and it might have a lot to do with accuracy, I'd guess. So I don't know where to put that information as you prospect, right? And I mean, you could just keep a list, but it's going to keep growing too. And there should probably be some kind of shared list between the prospecting and outreach and writing teams, et cetera, where you're kind of really tracking and carefully noting what you see, what kinds of topics seem like they're a big deal to your audience. And so anyhow, and I put 3D targets firmly in that category, because they're, I mean, I had never heard of them, and lo and behold, they seem like a big deal to the audience, and it's the kind of thing that would be fairly easy to write about, right? So how to make a 3D target, I could probably make a 3D target, mildly handy, and I think it's something that would be fairly accessible to write about for non-practicing writers, right? Which is, if you can't find a practicing bow hunter who's also a writer, or practicing archer who's a writer, you're going to have to write about. You're going to have non-practitioners doing the writing, and you've got to find accessible content directions. And that's also what fueled my selection for network security, is finding those angles that are for non-practicing writers. And that would probably be a good subject to discuss as well, because I'm guessing that unless you're hyper specialized, you don't have archers on staff necessarily, and you might have to go into that space. But anyhow, gosh, guys, we've been through 2 of these now. I have 4, and I've been talking for almost 50 minutes now. I'm doing great. I'm having a blast, but I also worry that you're either getting bored or it's too slow. So I'm going to come back around to local SEO and parenting, and I'm going to show you what to do next with archery and network security. First up, though, I'm going to go and download my network security for home and bust this bad boy open. Now, let's pretend, this is going to be interesting though. There's not a ton here. That's pretty good. These are probably going to be more consumer facing, non-practitioner types of queries. This is a long one, but let's say you wanted to find publishers. So I would Control-C you probably should, review them first and make sure there's not ambiguators in there, or terms or phrases that are not really related to what you're looking for. I'm not going to do that though, and this looks daunting, so I'm not going to. But what I will do is show you what we would do next, which is go over to this. This is my favorite, what I call a keyword concatenator. Well, I think that's what it's called. That's what they call it, and I like that name. So you put everything in here. You do in URL blog, you do blog, and guys, these are your queries. So we've got 400. I would put these into the search engine scraper of your choice and search them all. I like to use a tool called the Link Prospector. It is my tool. But yeah, now I've got a batch of queries that are about home network security, which I think would be more accessible for my team to write about. No offense to my writing team, but just we're smart, capable writers, but not necessarily practicing, network security professionals. So we've got to take the more consumer angle, and that's what this kind of approach can help do. Also, is identify those topics that might be accessible for non-practicing writers. But take all these and then search them. And I would also suggest putting parameters on the search for making them searchable from the past year or month. So it is interesting to look for all time, but these types of publishers may not have. You just don't want to find people who wrote about it like 3 years ago, and then they don't publish anymore. The site's down or what have you. So I would suggest going to past year if you're using the Link Prospector. How deep do you go? You could go down to 100 if you really need a lot of ops, 20 if you're just kind of getting started, 50 if you're in between. I'll try 50. This is home network security topics, blogs, past year. And then you hit submit. So then that's how I would go all the way from kind of topic, like initially starting into a topic that I don't know anything about, and then kind of cherry picking some angles that I think are accessible or approachable for my team, and then searching for publishers who might be interested in publishing on that topic. Let me show you some results of what that looks like. Here, I have the big archery list. So I did a huge scrape for archery publishers. And I think this is it. Yeah. Let's make this a little smaller. So this does have duplicate domains in it. So there's Lancaster Archery a couple times there. Excuse me. And this shows you, the LTS tells you the number of times that URL occurred in the SERPs. And then it just gives you a sense of the overall strength of that URL and its relation to the whole universe of queries that you ran. So a ton showed up for this Lancaster Archery. We've also, I think, got domain authority in there too. One thing I've noticed is pretty interesting is, and I can show you on the local SEO search, but when you have somebody who's high up in the list with a relatively low DA, that usually means that the entire site is about that topic. It seemed very true for in the local SEO space. I'll come back around to that. So what we would do with this, there's a ton of duplicates here. I would take all of these really and remove non-US TLDs and remove anybody we've contacted before. And then run it. We've got a little tool that helps only remove individual one URL per domain. And then once I have that list, then I would say, hey, contact finding and qualifying, let's build this list out. So this came back with 106,000, but then, we're really finding some garbage there towards the bottom. But I mean, that's actually not garbage. So there's still stuff, even down this low that only showed up once. This URL showed up once in the whole set, And I mean, who knows? I mean, it's a domain, it's a DA0. I'll tell you what, nobody else is outreaching to that, so you might as well. Back 40 sports, hunting. Okay. Anyways, that's the bottom. Here's the top. And I would take this whole list, remove, non-English TLDs, get one URL per domain, and then contact finding / qualifying at that point. Now, this is a huge list. If you're not going real big in whatever space, you don't need to query that much. But I want to show you the local SEO one. This one was pretty interesting to me. And I think it'll, folks on this webinar are going to be more likely to have been exposed to some of these terms before. So sort by count. And we can see up at the top some of the top queries that Google suggested. This is just from putting in local SEO. So I think some of these have to go. Of course, I don't think we want to get that granular with our prospecting. We don't want to go to local SEO Chicago. But so the objective here was to find topics that publishers whose audiences care about local SEO, and just to find a nice range of topics we could query for. So what I did is I took this list and combined it with InURL blog and the word blog. I removed stuff like local SEO optimization Bangkok, local SEO Chicago, etc., local SEO King, and here's what the results look like when I got it back from the link prospector. I think that's archery. Is this it? No, I think it's this one. Yeah. So here's who's at top. HubSpot, interesting. Ahrefs, cool. But this is where I noticed that the DA, if it's really high and they're number one, they're probably, the whole topic of the domain is probably not local. It's not till we get down to Bright Local that's what they're actually, the whole domain is about. And it's just something interesting. It's good to know that all these publishers have written about local, and they might be worth reaching out to if we come up with a good approach. But for my part, I'm almost more interested in going below that, the top ones, and trying to find folks that are just not quite as known, frankly, and trying to engage with them and kind of work my way up to somebody like Bright Local. This would be for ZipSprout. Bright Local's never heard of us, and so it would be really useful if we had some publications under our belt and maybe even some findings that we could share with them on their blog. And same for somebody like Moz or HubSpot or Ahrefs up here at the top. But you start, be humble, start low, start small, and start with maybe some of the folks for whom this isn't, or I mean, it's probably their main bread and butter, but like who are these guys? LocalIQ.com, DA22, but definitely about local. So these are the kind of guys that I'm guessing would be pretty productive to outreach to, and try to find a way kind of in front of their, oh God, this is part of the USA Today network. So maybe not, but anyhow, we'll probably send them an email anyways. But these folks are big, I didn't realize, but could certainly be worth approaching, right? And maybe, who knows, maybe USA Today decides they want to offer local sponsorships through their Local IQ site. So worst case is we get a no, but we get on the radar for somebody like this. But anyhow, I just wanted to, it was just interesting to me to see that the lower DAs that were up a little higher in that list were often, very specific to local. These, I first saw them at 286. I wonder if they're up higher than that. That's the only instance in the whole sheet. That's weird that they don't have more, because there's 1,500 here. They should be ranking more. I must only scrape the top 10 or something. But anyways, so this is a list that I couldn't have made really any other way that I can think of. I mean, I probably could have just searched local SEO and scraped down to 100 or something. That could have worked too. But I think having a range of queries helps me diversify the publisher spread, the domain spread, and really see a broader spectrum of the publishers out there who are writing on this topic of local SEO. And this was all generated, of course, from that starting point of the autocomplete. Now, we use it extensively for spaces that are kind of overworked, that we've overworked. So I do want to briefly show you parenting, just so you can get a sense of how things splinter out. So I love parenting styles. Parenting books could be a great, because if somebody's written about parenting books, and both of these, I would want to add 4 to them. Okay, so in addition to whatever else, in addition to running it like that, parenting books A, B, C, D, 4. Now, this is where you start to get the facets of the audience, right? Single moms, new dads, ADHD, new parents, dads, for 3-year-olds. So A, B, and this is what we're getting back. It's amazing to me still. And again, we're using I would use all of these for and put an InURL blog next to them, and blog, and get back this whole range of publishers who are writing on these, in the edges of these topics. I think you get a lot more than if you just look for parenting blogs, right? You get more of the generic stuff this way. I mean, don't ignore these, but I would go out on a limb and say that these are the people who get emailed the most frequently. These are the folks who are going to be asking for, $2,000 or more to publish a guest placement. I go after them if you've got the budget and get them, but also look beyond them. And the autocomplete is what enables us to do that. So again, I would go to I would take styles, books, classes is interesting. This is I think it's probably a specific parenting style. Quotes, nah, meme, nah. Magazine, I don't think so. Resources, that gets interesting. Parenting responsibilities is interesting too. Rules, roles, rights. Okay, now this gets into that legal realm. We saw that with archery as well, right? Which was the archery laws. This is parenting rights. And so this is where you start to split out some interesting topics too, though. So parenting rights and then look, another conjunction I'm seeing is in. And it's all interesting. So I don't know how to talk plainly about this, but what I see is if I type in A, Google's making a bunch of guesses here that are wrong. If I type in B, these are all wrong. These have nothing to do with parenting rights. C, well, I guess they kind of do. But now when I do C, now I'm getting the word parenting rights in the suggestions. And so these are all guesses, I think, whereas Um, these are all actual things that Google's seen before. That's my hunch, and probably someone has unpacked that, and SEO has unpacked that. I don't know exactly what it means, but anyhow. Let's see. I'm going to go back to my slides and see if I've left anything out, folks. I feel like we've gone pretty thoroughly through this subject, and I've really enjoyed it. Just, bearing down on this. So blog prospecting, I think you guys saw, we do widen our understanding of a known topic space and understand more. I call it a full spectrum. But really, to really call it a full spectrum, you need to have spent, I think you need to even get down to that granular level of discovering the string alignment from our bow hunting, or the bow archery example. And then, of course, it helps you find new publishers. And again, you're finding the more long tail publishers, and when you have these queries that are footprints, right? Like the bow rangefinder, the finger, what do they call it? Finger tabs or finger guards for bows. Like these elements of the practice that if you even know the word, that means, and you're writing that word, it means you're writing for the archery audience. So these are definite audience facing keywords, audience facing terminology. That's a lot of what you're identifying with this type of work. And who should use this? I mean, not everybody. Who shouldn't is if you don't really do link building full time, if you don't do guest placements, this probably won't be a big deal to you. If you're doing it on a small scale, not really useful. If you can't really afford to spend that much time on research, not particularly useful. If you're scattered like me, it may not be super useful because there isn't a real wholesale or a real formalized process in place for capturing everything that's capturable here. And it's to me, it starts to get overwhelming just because the more granular you get about stuff like string alignment in archery, the more you are kind of crystallizing these specific conditions that make the practice productive or unproductive. And knowing these kinds of things, you can't really know all of them probably without being a practitioner, but you could begin capturing them and building out a whole spectrum of items to write about. And this is where I think to an extent authority comes from, folks. It's knowing and being able to speak to the minutia and the complications, the minute complications of an individual space. And that's what I would call string alignment, and that's kind of what you're looking for, these little tiny discrepancies or irregularities that can occur that you don't know about unless you're a practitioner, and you don't write about unless you're a practitioner. And it's kind of like a gateway into this vertical and a gateway into finding publishers who are uniquely and distinctly about this topic. There's other pitfalls as well. But again, the biggest is that this is so fun, you might avoid other work. And I'm really not even I'm not even joking. I just really love this kind of prospecting. So we ran through archery, network security, local SEO, and parenting today. A little bit we touched on local SEO and parenting some. But really is about kind of isolating these individual suggested terms that we want to dig in deeper with and kind of batch into further autocomplete scraping so that we can have a huge list of terms to search for and find publishers who are writing about these topics. And you saw some of the stuff that, you don't realize all the things you're doing when you do your job sometimes. But one of the things I noticed on this webinar was isolating topics that are accessible to general knowledge writers. And so, in the network security space, we uncovered home network security. which I'm assuming is generally accessible. I couldn't write about it. I could take a stab at it, but let's just say my wife does the VCR programming in our family. Like I don't want to. I could probably write about it if I had to. We looked at local SEO, how we did some prospecting there, with having general knowledge but no real deep knowledge of the space. Then also parenting, which I have some of the stuff you get too deep of a knowledge about, and you don't think about stuff like parenting rights. So in my specific case, I'm married, and so I don't really think about parenting rights at all. And I think that's, if there's been a separation, that's probably more when that occurs. But that's a facet of parenting. The separation is, and if I come at parenting and prospecting for parenting opportunities based on my experience, I will be limited, and I won't be thinking as broadly about, for example, parenting rights. And so I think that's really important. I think that's one aspect of the suggest scraping that's probably the most beneficial. And it's, if you think your space, I'm not saying you don't, but you have biases that you might not be seeing or be aware of. And for me, this process really helps with that. Helps me find these probably lesser served audiences within this broad subject of parenting, raising children. So again, I'm just going to run through this, you guys. You've been an amazing audience. You put single key term in the auto complete scraper of your choice. If you want to use ours, you can dump in 20, 30, 40, 50 at a time. It'll probably break after 30 or 40. At this point, it's still kind of in beta. Excuse me. If you want to use it, you're welcome to, but I'm going to ask you to write a blog post about your findings, like how useful it was, how productive it was for you, what you learned, etc. So again, you start with one keyword, and then you go into analysis and selection. You're looking for disambiguated and general topic footprint phrases. I also learned that I look for topics that are accessible, that I presume will be accessible to my team. You're also looking for topics that are surprises to you or that you haven't thought about before. And then you put out all of that into the everything that you like, you can put into the autocomplete scraper. I do sometimes add words like for or to or and or verse, stuff that seems to kick suggestions back frequently from the autocomplete tool. So, you can think about adding appropriate conjunctions using your favorite tool, and then put all that into the autocomplete scraper. You don't have to add conjunctions. I often do, but not always. Then you're going through your whole list. You're looking for, trying to remove the garbage. And remember, in my example with archery, I thought archery 3D targets was some kind of online game, and I was about to kill them all, remove them all from our list. But it turns out it's a whole new practice in archery, which is you're just making these 3D targets. It's probably not new, but it's a practice I didn't know about in archery, where you make, so check stuff before you remove it, right? Because again, if you're new to the space or you have preconceived notions about the space, like I did about archery, you wouldn't know about these things. And so that's, I mean, guys, that's the majority of your job is learning the vertical, or learning a space, learning the ins and outs. And that's a lot of what you're uncovering. So, and then lastly, you just put everything together in URL blog and the word blog, and you're looking for publishers who have written about these items. So I shared with you the list prospected, the archery, and local SEO. I think that's it. I don't have any more slides, so I guess I should stop talking. If you have questions, I'd love to hear them. If you have suggestions, I'm open to those too. But folks, I've had a blast, and I, of course, really enjoy talking about this stuff. Really appreciate those who stuck around to the end. And I wrote an article on this too, and goes into the same detail, not quite as probably as thorough, and I think it leaves some stuff out too, practical items. But you can search for that article, and I'll try and put it up in this video as well on YouTube. But folks, thank you very much. I'm going to now try and turn off this thing that I think was working. And just oh, guys, hold on. Let me see if I can stop. There we are. There we are. I'm going to stop the broadcast now. We're in the vortex here, the internet vortex. I'll just stop screen sharing. Anyhow, folks, thank you very much. Hope to hear some questions and talk to you guys next month.